This is Fam Electric Ghost, and we are live on our Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook channels with Eryn Nicole for the first time. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thanks for having me.
So what we have to do is we do this for free. We have interviews with emerging artists and indie artists, and so we have some sponsors. So one of the first things we're going to talk about is one of our sponsors. If you see scrolling below, is an iOS and Android app called Newsly. If you go to www.newsly.me and you use coupon code GHOST2021, and that's still valid, you can receive 1 month free premium subscription. What Newsly does is it reads back the news to you in a natural human voice so you can stop scrolling and start listening. So check out Newsly on iOS or Android. Use coupon code GHOST2021 and you get 1 month free premium subscription. So that's kind of cool. And then we have one more sponsor that helps us out that we want to get into. There's actually a scan code, and we're going to put it up right now if it will help us. It's acting kind of weird. There we go. So Double Jack Online is an online lottery out of Europe, and it allows you to play Keno and Powerball. If you take that code and scan it with your cell phone, you can get onto that, and you can win the lotto and get paid through PayPal or Bitcoin, and you also can become an influencer for them. And then whatever you earn by people you get to join, it's like passive income. There's a dashboard, and you can get set up. But they also do NFTs. So if your band wants to convert band art into NFTs, you can do that. You can also do crowdfunding with them. So if you need money to support your recording or a tour or a record, you can get in touch with them, and you just check that scan code, gets you into the system. So that's kind of cool. So this is we like to have support for our podcast, so we get these sponsors to help us out. But now we're gonna be able to get off of that. They help us out, so we have to push them a little bit. But now we've got your link below. And we also have a song that you just released today that we're probably going to go into in a couple of seconds. But you're in Canada, right?
Yeah, I'm in Hamilton, Ontario.
Hamilton, Ontario. So I'm in New Hampshire, so not too far away,
Yeah,
but not too close either. So what you just released a brand new song today in instrumentals, and we've got it kind of queued up, and we're gonna get it. It's called "Be Happy." So do you want to like maybe give a little preview of like "Be Happy" what the vibe is for this song before we play it?
Yeah, so I was a little bit inspired by like the Beatles and like old Elton John songs on this one. I just love the pop chords and like the piano vibes and everything. But I like to put hip hop drums on everything. I also had help from Fonstott with the mastering and some live guitar strums, and we did a lot of fun stuff together. He also has a lyric version as well on his
Mm-hmm.
account. Yeah, if you want to play it.
Yeah, we're gonna play it right now, and then we'll put you on mute, and then we'll come back. Okay. And then we'll do the full interview. So I'm getting ready to play it right now. So I'll put you on mute, and then we'll come right back with the interview. And we'll look forward to like all the fans hearing this because this is a brand new song just released today. We like to get into the interview where we talk about like where did you start in music. So one of the first things we always ask everybody is in terms of your background in starting with music is like what was your first experience with getting into music and like at what age?
Um, like, the first time I ever did anything that was music related
Right.
was, so I have a song called Jazz Hop, and the image for it is, like, literally me on the drums when I was, like, 2 years old. But, like, when I actually got into music was later. I was, like, 7, and I just, like, kinda walked up to a piano and started playing things. So, like, I wasn't in lessons yet. At that point, my family put me into lessons because they saw that I had this, like, natural ability already. Um, I only did up to, like, 3rd year, and then I started doing everything just, like, casually. Um, I did get some advanced knowledge, but I was self-taught from that point on, and I didn't actually get into, like, producing and stuff until, I think, 4 years ago. I had a friend who was just, like, mixing on their phone, and I started doing that, and basically what happened was, so this app called Music Maker Jam, I was really popular on that app, and the app itself is not very popular, but most people on there would know me as, like, DJ Kiwi, which is, like, what I was doing for, like, 3 years. Um, all my friends and fans there were basically pushing me to, like, make real music and, like, get on these platforms like Spotify, YouTube, all that other stuff. So I decided to go with my real name and, you know, take it seriously, start putting out like official projects and things like that, and just moving away from like the whole phone thing because I already had like a bunch of songs made there, but I wanted to do all like composed songs from that point.
Yeah, it's kind of
So
like
I
you have these niche markets, but then you want to get to a wider area, so you got to kind of go with a more traditional music structure, I guess, or the platforms that like the Spotify's of the world, the iTunes and the Amazons to kind of get out there. Even I think that's where all artists who might start like on SoundCloud or they start on an underground platform and then suddenly they blow up and they're TikTokers are big example. They're on TikTok and then suddenly they get a record deal and they're everywhere.
isn't that crazy? And then TikTok is like another thing that I haven't really hit yet, but I'm trying to. And like, yeah,
Well,
eventually
there's
I want to do all those things. It's hard to manage, you know, and I had no idea how to do that at first, you know. So I just kept doing what I knew. But eventually I started seeking out people that were bigger than me and like doing more of this stuff like officially. And
mhm.
so a lot's changed over the last year for sure. Um, just like talking to other artists. That's how I got to where I'm at now. Mm.
Yeah, and if that song was muted on a replay, I can go re-edit it when it goes up. So the live version might have a mistake in it, and I'll fix it before I
Okay,
put it on Spotify. I'll check it, and if there was a problem, I'll edit it. So the
cool.
live thing is sometimes we run into issues with equipment issues or something, but like I'll make sure that that's there so you don't have to worry about it. But the live version, and I'll probably pull the live versions down and use the edited versions as the final version. But
Cool.
yeah, I think it's interesting because my daughter was talking about TikTok and she shows me like once a week we sit down and she shows me her favorite TikToks and she's like 22. And I like as a musician, I have never I'm on TikTok, but I don't get it. I don't I just put videos like the same video I would put on YouTube or the same video I would put on Instagram. And my daughter said, well, that's not gonna work. And I said, yeah, I can see because when she shows me the TikToks that she likes, it's a totally different vibe, and I don't know how to get into that vibe. And so like it's its own thing. So I was like, wow, I was like, maybe I'm not going to be successful there unless I can figure out how to get that vibe.
Whole thing, like, and I don't know if they're doing the editing on TikTok because I've tried to edit videos with TikTok itself and it never turns out how I wanted to. And then I'm like, they must be editing it in other
I
places
think
and
I
then
think they have other tools. I've
yeah,
seen like apps. There are apps that will do certain things to make TikTok videos, and there are people that sell these apps, and there are these tools that will create the cuts in the kind of flow that you're seeing and the effects that kind of either make the voice echo out and all this other stuff that people do. But yeah, there's a lot of production in it. There's some stuff that's haphazard, and then there's stuff that's like heavily edited, and they're like, okay, well, that's a certain kind of vibe. But Yeah, it's just interesting because everybody comes at it, and you were saying like you were doing you. You're being you, and I think that today
That's
is what the market is. You know, you like people want originality,
more than ever
and
before. Like people in their bedrooms are more successful now than ever before, you know? Like we have the whole internet. If you make something, doesn't matter what it is, like somebody it's the whole internet, you know? People are gonna
yeah,
like all you gotta do is get noticed, but that's the other thing that's kinda difficult is that, like, there's a lot of good artists, even good video makers, don't know a thing about promoting, and it's like, you know, networking, this kind of thing, like, that's how you get to that point, so it's like, yeah, it's difficult. It's been, like, a huge journey for me, like, going from bedroom producer to trying to expand to, like, actually getting out of my bedroom one day, which, like, I think
yeah.
I'm getting to that point, but
Yeah,
it's
it's interesting because, like, yeah, like a veteran producer, sometimes they're like they haven't played live shows. We haven't gotten to those questions, but like, there's a whole genre where like you know, the Beatles eventually got off the road, and all they did is stay in the studio. So the way I look at it is like veteran producers are kind of in that kind of Beatle mode where the Beatles decided like I'm just going to use the studio as an instrument. I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm just going to do the work in the studio, and
and they
there's a
changed
place for it.
I love the Beatles. They're, like, my biggest inspiration, and I love how they changed so much over, like, the eras and everything. Like, they started out with this, like, kinda cookie cutter pop stuff, love songs, and then just, like, evolved to, like, revolution songs and, like, all this stuff, you know, like, I just like, they're always doing whatever they feel like doing, you know, they're not, like, stuck on one thing, um,
It's
and
interesting because 'cause they're kinda like a teeny bop band, right? They were like the way people have like it they're like a teeny I don't know, it's like teen stars, like
it
very
does,
young band. Yeah, and
yeah,
then they weren't doing anything that was like super like creative, like Sergeant Pepper. They weren't doing White Album level stuff.
not yet,
They were just
right, yeah,
yeah, they were doing this British pop, and it was cool, but it wasn't as distinctive as what they ended up doing, and it wasn't as mature as and as deep, and it's so inspirational that even bands today are always, you know, name checking Sergeant Pepper's and Abbey Road and White Album as
yeah,
like, okay, that's the way I want to produce, or they even have like a term Beatle chords, like the
yeah,
chords that the Beatles used compared to what they're originally doing is it kind of really because George Martin and then the rest of the band all kind of, you know, stepped up their game. You know, George Harrison picking up sitar and the level of guitar playing he got to, and then the songwriting between Lennon and McCartney, it is kind of challenging each other. And even Harrison had so many songs, you know, you end up having All Things Must Pass was like a three vinyl record of all the songs he couldn't put on the Beatle records.
yeah,
So he so
okay,
he was actually a substantial writer, and he just wasn't getting all the spots on the records. But yeah, it's just interesting that today it seems like songcraft is kind of coming back, where there was this period where we had people just doing like a clip or beat focused music, but now people are starting to get back into oh yeah, why did I like those songs in the 70s and the 80s and 90s? Well, because they had, you know, an intro, an outro, you know, they have a structure. And there's something about structure that I think can kind of, you know, there's nothing wrong with
I think
ethos
it's
stuff, but I think having structure is cool.
I think it's the chords really, and that's one thing that stays consistent through all the Beatles eras is, like, they have really strong chord progressions and stuff, and, like, soul, obviously, but, like,
Yeah.
what I find interesting about them is that they kinda did it backwards because most artists will start doing really obscure or, like, whatever they feel like doing and eventually evolve to that pop status, and then they start doing these, like, pop
Yeah.
songs
They
where
went
they're
in reverse.
exact opposite, and it's like, I wanted to just skip to the Sergeant Pepper stage, like, you know, like, don't really well, I still do like the pop chords and everything, but, like, you know,
Yeah, well,
just do it like
they're like
yeah,
their original progressive band, you know? They're kinda doing like you know, you get Pink Floyd, well, Pink Floyd was a progressive from the start, right? They were
right.
doing psychedelic, and then they went into the kinda, like, concept albums with these really deep structures that are pulling classical and rock and funk and everything, and the
I like
Beatles kinda set that yeah.
the
I mean, the
best.
Beatles set the stage for Pink Floyd, in my opinion. You know, the
Yeah.
Sid Barrett saw what they were doing and he went like really crazy in terms of, you know, and then literally, but he, you know, when it first started, super psychedelic, like there was like Sergeant Pepper's way beyond Peppers. But then they kind of it got into this kind of I don't know what you call it, atmospheric, like, you know, David Gilmour coming in and then just doing these atmospheric guitar solos that are so like iconic, but they're very thematic. And I think that that kind of led to like a cinematic view, and even like The Wall became a movie because like Pink Floyd stuff is so surreal and cinematic in its structure. You kind of picture things when you hear it. Like,
Oh,
and when
yeah.
I was before I ever saw The Wall, I mean, I was in the basement in the '70s listening in my headphones, imagining what they were talking about because
Right,
it was so visual.
right. Mhm. Yeah, The Dark Side is my favorite because like, they did a lot of live performances of that too with, like, crazy visuals and stuff, and, like,
Yeah,
how
yeah, well, I like animals a lot.
literally see those things, it's crazy. I can't wait till I have my own visuals going on, like, big shows like
Yeah,
that. Amazing.
so you're what one thing I wanted to know is, in terms of, like, your music, are you moving toward, uh, doing performance? Because I
Yeah,
know you're a bedroom producer and you've been in that zone, but now things are kinda opening up after, you know, post-COVID, we're getting to a place where people are doing the festivals again. Is
yeah.
that something that you're planning to do?
Yeah, I'd like to do Be Happy Live with Fonstadt, the full song. I'd love that, and also, I have some really cool ideas about merging, I don't know if I should say this, but hey, why not? I think it would be really cool to bring lo-fi music more into the mainstream by incorporating it with art galleries that, like, display cover art, stuff like that, with the music playing, the lights, merch, whatever, and, like, have kind of a concert vibe, but also more of, like, a gallery vibe because it is, like, lounge music and it's chill. It's a totally different experience, like, you don't see a lot of lo-fi performances in general, so it's like, I wanna make that more of a mainstream thing, yeah.
I think that's a cool vibe because you think about, like, the coffee shop crowd or the art crowd, like, you know, in Boston, we have all these art galleries. And there is this kind of convergence where my daughter's a graphic artist and she's had openings where she's had musicians come and actually play around her work. So her work is up and then the musician comes and plays like acoustic guitar or keyboards. And so I think that's a cool thing to kind of go into an art gallery and have a combination of like, you know, musicians and artists kind of vibing and you can have yeah.
Yeah, like, there's, like, so many things you could do with that, and I wanna perform these things even though like, most lo-fi is, like, totally digital, even if, like, live instruments are used or whatever, like, sometimes it's a little bit hard to perform those things because they're created on a DAW, so it's like unless you're making it on a looper, it's a little bit hard to, like, translate that, if you know what I mean? So, but, like, Be
Yeah.
Happy is made for performance, like, it's really just piano, basic guitar, and, like, singing, which is, like, easy to perform, right? So I'm starting to move into that more so that with this in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, the thing about, like, if you use I mean, I have some tools, like, I'm a synthesist, so I'll just use my Moogs, and I'll use a lot of, like, Euro racks and stuff that are kind of it's all gonna work because it's not based on a PC, right? So if you go and you've got a laptop and you're running something off your DAW, like, if the DAW crashes or the laptop crashes, you're like, "Oh, I'm done." But if you've got, like, a Moog or a Roland, you can just play it.
Or an
You know?
actual, like, piano, yeah, of course.
Um
I'd like to
Well,
have one
then
of those
then
things.
you have things like MPCs. I have a thing called a Kai Force, and now a Kai Force is like a DAW, but it's like a living DAW that actually has all the songs built into it. So it's like a hardware instrument that has all these pads, and you can trigger clips off of it. So you could have your whole song clipped out, but you can rearrange it live. So it's like an ultimate kind of better than a CDJ because you can just pick clips off wherever you want, and it's very stable. So it's not based on using a computer because all the sounds are built into it. So you can just go and kick off all the things you want. And if you felt like rearrange, you can take your song and just run it, or you could just rearrange it live.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff I wanna do from now on too, but it's all about, like, having the right equipment and stuff. It's definitely a goal, though.
Yeah, because I think there's a lot of cool stuff out there for musicians now that maybe what I like about some of the new tools that are kind of not like piano based. They're like matrix grid based systems that like DJs, EDM artists that don't know how to play piano or they don't know how to play guitar, but they're a producer and they want to play something live and they don't want to just depend on the DAW, so they can use a MIDI controller or a matrix type of controller with like a grid so that they can just kick off whatever they want and they can still be creative, because if you think about it, like then when you're going live you can just ad hoc, okay, I'm going to move this clip into a different position, so you're kind of ad-libbing like any other musician that decides, well, I'm just going to play the guitar a little different tonight. You know
Yeah,
what I
because
mean?
you can't just, like, have your Mac on stage. It's a little awkward, isn't it? At least there's all these different ways now, right? I just have to learn more about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff that you can get into that I think allows musicians to kind of, do what, the rappers initially, because they couldn't afford instruments. So they were just using like the vinyl decks, not the what we
Oh,
have today.
I'd like
And
to do that too, though, just for, like, the vibe and everything. That'd be cool too.
because those are pretty stable. Like if you learn how to use a vinyl like DJ set, it's super stable. You're not dependent on the CPU. You got to actually get the skill to scratch or the skill to actually mix the records, which is its own
That's
thing. It is a skill.
that's a whole other thing, yeah. I'd like to learn all these things eventually, but, like, I think mainly what I wanna do is compose for, like, other people and, like, sometimes do live looping or something like that, depending on the song. Like, I don't even know how I would do that. It's just a little complicated right now because the way I have my songs set up. But if I could do a whole album with, like, a certain intention, then it would be a lot easier. Yeah, I'll think
What do
about
you
it.
think about, like, albums versus singles? Are you the type of person that when you're doing your work, you think of it as a bigger piece than just one single? You because, like, I'm coming from an age where of the album. I'm a child of the '70s, everything was like a record, and
Yes.
I know this is the time period of the playlist and the single, and there's less of an album focus, but
The
I have
reason
always been into albums.
The reason for that is unfortunately just because the algorithm does not help albums as much as singles. So people are doing this because they know that, but at the same time, like my music, even though it's all singles, like it is an album. You know what I mean? I haven't posted it as an album, but they all play into each other. It's supposed to be like as like a big playlist, and like the key thing from one to the next, like, a lot of the same key signatures and stuff like that, regardless of, like, what style it is or, like, if that changes, like, they still play into each other well because of that.
Okay. So
So
you built it like an album, but it's,
yeah, but it's
presented as the singles because that's the way the market is.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I get
that's
it. I
just
mean, I've
visual.
had I've struggled with it because I still put records out. I mean, I put an album out today, but, like, I've been putting singles out. I put singles out, like, on SoundCloud. But then when things come out on Spotify, they tend to be albums, and maybe I'll take a couple other tracks and make them singles. But I tend to work from a progressive type of nature. The bands I liked were like Yes and Pink Floyd and Genesis, and they always presented concepts, and that's kind of where my head's at. And so, like when I do live shows, it's all based on like a theme of whatever record I'm doing at the time. It'll run through the whole record. But then when you're a live act, you can do that, and then I can kind of like, okay, I can present my work in that way because that's the way I play live. And so that's my mode of operation. But I do understand the market is different, and so I have started moving into singles. But so you said you were also working on with you like to produce other people. Are you already in the process of like working on other projects, like doing features, or you're working with other people producing their work?
Yeah, I work with a lot of other producers and artists. I do have an EP coming with Constat. Like this is just the beginning of our projects together. So we have two versions of the Be Happy track so far, and we already have like I'm not even sure how many songs we're gonna do together in the end, but we definitely have like 3 that are, like, almost done. So we have, like,
Mhm.
another EP coming. I have another EP coming with Definition Productions, who's another producer who does trap beats. So, like, I'm gonna be featured on his album that's, like, all trap beats just to, like, kinda
Okay.
get to the market there a little bit. Um,
Yeah.
and, like, I like trap beats. It's not really on brand for me, so, like, that's more
Trying
of
something different. You're
there's
trying just yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing is, it's hard. It's like we're in an age where genre is not necessarily the thing used to be that I was talking with a band last night, Tokyo Teens, and they were saying like they came from the like 80s, 90s, and you had to stay in your lane. Like if you were like a new wave, new romantic band, or you're into dark pop, you're like that's what you are. The record label said, well, that's what you are. You gotta stay there, right? And they want you just to stay in that zone. But now because the labels aren't as big, or you're more independent and dealing with distributors, you can kind of well, I want to do trap one day. I want to do dark wave. I want to do EDM. I want to do, trip hop. I want to do whatever.
Oh, and I've said this before, but I think it works if you have, like, a couple genres mixed that are, like, subgenres of the same thing. So, like, my main thing is lo-fi. There's, like, a hip hop subgenre of lo-fi. There's also jazz lo-fi, pop lo-fi, and, like, all these different things. It's like this overarching thing. So as long as I keep that, I can still hit all these different markets every single time I drop, you know what I'm saying? So, but it's
Mhm.
never like such a jarring thing. Like I'll never do metal. I'll probably never do EDM, even though I have. I won't post it like how I normally would on my Spotify. I also have things separated where, like you said, you have some on SoundCloud, some on BeatStars, some on YouTube. Like
Yeah.
there's different places for different stuff. As long as everything's in the right place, then it works, right? You don't want to have
Yeah.
people coming to the page expecting lo-fi or subgenres of lo-fi and get metal. That would just be weird, right?
Yeah.
So that's how I've been doing it, and it does work. Like nobody really complains about that, but that could just be because it's this day and age and everything too. Um,
Yeah. I'm kind of a big fan of a guy like Prince who used to just like on the same album, he was doing multiple genres. Um,
yeah.
he would do, a heavy rock song, then a funk song, then a soul song. And so
But
he never,
because that was
huh?
what's really him. Like that's what he liked to do, and
Yeah,
so
that's his style. I mean, that's and kind of like the way I deal with expansive sound is like I have a punk aesthetic and then I have a progressive rock aesthetic. And punk and the progressive rock aren't necessarily the same things because like the Sex Pistols and Pink Floyd are not in the same zone. But I think the aesthetic you can think about like a band like Radiohead, they get kind of punky. Again, like Wilco, they'll go and do a little stuff that has like a punk edge, but they're very much in the kind of line of like a Pink Floyd or like a Genesis, but they'll go into like a grunge sound on a record and then go back into a progressive sound. And so they kind of like, genre bending within the framework of progressive rock. You can kind of still have that punk aesthetic to give you a little edge.
yeah, and I don't think anybody has a problem with that. You know, people have been doing this for a long time, and that's like exactly how music evolves, you know. Just because it's not mainstream yet, like if you keep pushing it, it will be. And like the more people you inspire and everything, like I'm personally inspired by artists that are super, super weird and somehow like still super successful. They just
Hmm.
it's just proof that like you can do whatever you want and still be successful, but it's a
Like
question
a
of
Frank Zappa. You think about like Frank Zappa was like the weirdest of the weird, but
yeah,
he technically like unbelievable artist, but then he had this weird sense of humor that is like he's playing Hendrixian solos when he's throwing this crazy humor on it, and we're like, how does that work? And some people are like they don't like Zappa because like they don't like the lyrics.
or they
They
will be
understand he can play like amazing, but they don't like his lyrics, right? Or they think it's
too
too
much.
much.
Yeah,
Yeah, because they'll do all this orchestration and then they'll have
I
this
like
weird sense of
that.
humor, but it was like it's very kind of niche. Like you like it or you don't, but you have to admit that he's like a brilliant artist, but you don't have to like it. I mean, you can respect him or not and say, "Well, I don't like every track," or "I don't like his vibe." But I understand like he's a genius, but it's not everybody's cup of tea.
Well, the thing about genius is that they have a hard time to relate to other people. They feel like so alone, and then they use music as a way to like express that. That's why they make such weird stuff. It's like you gotta respect it, but it's like you can't really put yourself in that mindset because it's just such a rare thing. And if you have like a rare thing, you should put it out just the way he did. And like, yeah, it's more of a niche thing. It's never like mainstream per se, but like not everybody has to be mainstream. I don't even like mainstream that much, you know what I
But the
mean?
weird thing is sometimes he would have a song that would break through the mainstream, and you were like, "Why?"
Yeah.
But it's like, it's like sometimes you'll get like a progressive it's like Lou Reed. Lou Reed was super progressive. The Velvets never really kicked at the time they were playing. But then he came out of the Velvets, did "Walk on the Wild Side," and that song is like you never would have thought that song would ever make it. It had stuff that the censors actually let through, and you're like, "Why did that work?" And you can sit there and nod your head. I don't know how that worked because he's such an experimental artist. But sometimes, like he just stayed in his zone, and he kept on perfecting it, and eventually the world came to him,
I
and they're
think
like,
what
"Wow."
it is if you do what you actually care about, what you actually like, and put yourself into it, like there's not enough people doing that. And that's just proof that you can do whatever you want and be successful and hit the mainstream too if you really like just do what you feel like doing. Um,
Yeah, I think there's a big place for artists to like not try to be the next Beyonce or try to be the next like Freddie Mercury or trying to be the next Michael Jackson. Just try to be the next best you, right? You take what you're really good at and you do the best you can. And I think what I like about the punk aesthetic was you got like, the Ramones. They just came at it and they said, "We're just gonna be us." Right? In Talking Heads, they just like we're just gonna do, and there's nothing like the Talking Heads. They just took and this wind did something. And like, is that new wave? Is that punk? Is it what is that? It's just so different. They just were them. You know what I mean? And that's who they are.
that's the part that can be difficult is like where does this fit? And like when you're playlisting and stuff like that and doing promo for your songs, it's like, I don't know where to put this or where to submit to because like technically it's this, but it's really not. And then it's also
Yeah, I
this.
don't know if the Talking Heads would make it in the playlist world. I think that was like a CBGB scene that like the art, like the Rolling Stones of the world and the Village Voice, they wrote it up, right? And it was more like the critics kept on telling everybody this band's important. And that's kind of, I think it's hard in the playlist world for bands like that to get through. I think that is more still like a music magazines or critics will push bands like that.
Yeah, of course. But also, there's the off chance that your music will get into all of those playlists. And now you're in all these different markets because of one song. And like everybody likes it. So, like, I've had that happen before. And I've had ones that got rejected by like everybody. So it's like you never really know, right? You
Well,
gotta
I
just,
think that's where I was talking to the band I was talking to last night, and they were saying like some people will work on one song for like a year, and then other artists will put out songs like every week. And one in a producer I was talking to, Billy Hume, he's saying like I used to like he used to say I would work on something for months, and then I'd see these other producers putting out like massive amount of output, and then they're actually doing very well. And it's kind of like, well, maybe you should kind of throw things out there because you don't know what's going to work. And
I
so
would,
it's
I would I would never work on something for that long. It just seems like a waste of time. It's like they're not your songs are not your babies, you know what I mean? You should just like get it to a point that you like it enough or that you think other people will like it. Like, because even if you don't like it, it's the whole internet. This is like why I always say this. But yeah, like, of course, somebody's going to like it. Don't stress. Just do better on the next one. And like,
but the weird
people
thing
are
is I think
perfectionists
have
and
you have
everything.
you have you ever had a song where you didn't think it was that good and then maybe a friend said, "Yeah, that's pretty good," and then you're like, "I don't know," and then you put it out and it's not the song that you like you have a track that you wrote and you like it better, and then maybe a track that your friends like or maybe a track that you weren't so sure about, but it's okay, I'll put it out. And
Recently, yeah.
do those did it ever happen, like, with that one actually better than you ever thought it would?
Yeah, so, like, I basically sent some, like, really lazy piano loops to, like, another producer, and I was like, see what we can do with this." Like, I didn't put any effort into this at all, and it ended up being one of my biggest, like, trap beats, um, that I'm, like, featured on, And I think it's the simplicity that people like so much, you know what I mean? Like, to me, it's lazy. To other people, it's, like, exactly enough, like, you know? So that's
Well,
why
your
you got.
lazy might be
Yeah,
more work than somebody else because we have our own standards, right? So that's why the argument that like if you hold something because you like I had some guys I used to work with, right? And they were guitar players, and like they do solos. Like, what if they were like, oh, if that doesn't get close to a Jimmy Page or a Hendrix or a Clapton, then I don't like it. Right? I said, "Well, that's you. Why are you trying to be Page? Why are you trying to be Clapton? Be yourself." And it's like they would say, "Oh, I don't want to put that down." And I'm
why
like,
they don't
"That-
like it, because they're not being themselves. They're not doing what they want, like,
yeah, well, everybody, I think people try to aspire and they try to technically create things, and then they maybe make too many gates for themselves. And I tell you, you got to be more willing to kind of trust yourself and not compare yourself because like you're gonna and you're never gonna be Hendrix. Who's ever gonna be Stevie Wonder? They're not gonna do it. You can get close to it. You might be in the zone, but you're never gonna be that person unless you're gonna sit there and try to hit every note. So why not try to just feel good about what you can do?
and, like, everybody in their production and their, whatever they're doing, there might just be small little things that they do as a personal preference that you don't even know what it is when you're listening to it, but, like, you pick up on that, right? And it's like that's how people get their, like, own sound, like, for example, I cut the high end on everything just because I like that, like, muddy lo-fi sound or
Yeah, you
whatever.
want the
Makes
lo-fi.
everything kinda easy to listen to. And it's like, you know, people don't necessarily know what it is when they're listening to it, but they just pick this up while listening to all my stuff, and they're just like, I don't know, like stuff like that. When you're listening to other artists, like I don't know, Linkin Park, they just decided to like mishmash this like DJ and rock thing going on, and it's like they just made those choices by preference, and it could just be small things, but it's literally you can't really mimic those things because it's a mindset. Like,
Yeah.
you
Well, I
can try to
think
mimic the sound all you want, but unless you have the same mindset, it's not gonna be like that. Yeah, it's weird.
I think I was watching an interview with Peter Gabriel, and he had this kind of tendency to like, I don't want any hi hat on my drum beats, right? I want to pull it out. And a lot of his like
No,
early solo work, if you listen to it, he pulled the hi hats out. They were always. Then when he went to his biggest record, he had a drummer that like argued with him and said, I really want to put the hi hat in. And he's like, no, like when I don't do hi hats, I don't want it. And then the drummer kind of forced it and said, I can really do this really awesome hi hat on this song. You need to put it in. And so Peter kind of relented. He's okay, fine. And then, So is like the biggest record he ever did. And the song
um,
where he actually put the hi on was the one that actually was the biggest one of the biggest ones in his career. So
yeah,
it's just interesting. Sometimes you have like an aesthetic and then people can kind of you know you can adjust.
yeah, yeah, and I do think that, like, there's probably things like that that I could improve that would make it be more of a mainstream thing, but, like, if it's your personal preference, like, I think at the end of the day, you should make whatever you like still, like,
Yeah,
unless
yeah.
unless your goal is money, like, you should really just make whatever you like, yeah,
Well,
and
yeah, I think the whole thing with was he was trying to actually make money.
yeah, so, and then it was a good call, right?
He is a good call because before he was like totally experimental. Like the first like three Peter Gabriel albums are named Peter Gabriel. They just have different covers, but they all say Peter Gabriel. They don't say anything else. They're very experimental, and it was like he wasn't trying. And marketing people are like, "Well, how do we tell the difference between this one and this one and this one?" And he's like, "I don't want people to be able to tell the difference." So it was like he was just being really progressive and difficult in terms of like, I don't really care if this is going to make it. But then when he got the show, he's like, okay, maybe I do care about trying to make it. So he actually did the work
Maybe
to
I do
actually
care.
craft it.
That's
Yeah, but
funny.
I saw a thing where he actually put a lot of effort in. He spent like a year working on the record, and he had all these different people coming in, and their goal was to actually, you know, be successful. and they actually worked, and they had like a drive to do it. But he had been in a world where he didn't really, do that. He always just did what he wanted, and whether or not the audience liked it or not, that's what he did. It's just he got to a point in his career where I said, "Well, this time I want to see if I can actually do it," and then he did. So I think it's like an artist, you never know where you are. Like a lot of times, I for years I've just do what I want, and then once in a while I'll work with somebody and I'll try to put something out that's a little different, that has a different goal because I'm working with somebody else. So I'll listen what they want to say. I'll collaborate. But yeah, it's different however you work.
Yeah, what other questions did you wanna go over real quick?
Well, I kind of
Or
go through the questions. Sometimes I don't follow it exactly, but one of the things that we talked about, you're actually doing collabs with other types of artists and within your own genre. But one of the questions I like to ask people about is kind of like, what are your thoughts about the future of music and your particular style of music? Where do you see it fitting? And do you see that there's a trend where your audience, you're finding your audience?
um, it's the genre mixing for sure, because if you look at it, like, what's popular now, you hear a lot of, like, melodic rap, which is, like, a mix of, like, pop with rap, rock, all that stuff together, like pop punk, all those things mixed. And that becomes what's trending is you take a bunch of popular genres that are there already and like make a hybrid thing out of it. That's like the best stuff I think. And like I always stick with the pop chords because as long as it has that, it's going to be catchy. People will like it. It's going to have the same effect as other styles of music in the past, but it's the stylistic choices that sets it apart, right? So I think that's where it's headed now with the lo-fi is like a revamp of old lounge music. Now we can mix that with hip hop, jazz. This is already happening, you know what I mean? I just want to pump that up even more and like
Hmm.
push to like the performance aspect of it because right now everything's digital and I feel like we need to take a step back from that and go back to live performing a little bit. Like there's too
Yeah.
many like I love bedroom producers, but there's too many, you know what I mean? Like we need to like step out of the box a little bit. Um yeah, I think that's what we need to do is like merge the old styles with the new styles, have digital but also have live and like, bring back like analog and like
Yeah. Well, I'm a big
all that stuff.
well, as a bedroom producer, I'm an analog bedroom producer. I don't use a DAW. I'm in my bedroom, but everything I use hardware recorders and Euro racks and Moogs and Roland hardware synths, even though I'm in the bedroom. And I've run into other guys that are in the same kind of thing. So it's like where there's a big belief in analog. Just because analog has a variability and an organic kind of nature where I feel like my synthesizers are kind of like members of my band, because when you use analog synthesizers, they kind of have their own personality and they go wherever they're going to go. And they just allow you to be like a one or two person unit, and they actually speak to you in ways that you can't always anticipate. And as a musician, what you like to do with them is the fact they're kind of like playing in a jazz band. They go where they're going to go, and then you follow them. And I think that's what a lot of people like about analog is because the variability of it. Like a mode takes 20 minutes to warm up, and it sounds different from the start of it to however long you keep it on, and it doesn't behave the same way any day you use it. And so that gives you some variability you don't get out of digital.
No, and digital is like the clipping sounds and everything. I personally hate working with digital sometimes because of that. I prefer live instruments, but like when you're trying to manage all this stuff, like when you're composing and working all these different instruments, digital is kind of easier, but it's not the best. Like when you want to do live performances and have everything sound clean and perfect, like you want analog and you want like live instrumentation, like for sure. And that's another thing that's like we need to like bring that back a little bit. I feel like there's not enough people who know how to play live instruments or even know theory in general. Like everybody who's an artist should go take beginner theory lessons right now. Like it's just a simple thing. Um, is gonna, like, totally up your game like crazy. If you just pick it up a little bit, then yeah. And then maybe learn how to play, like, 1 or 2 instruments, like, that's gonna get you so far, like, that's yeah.
Yeah, it's that being able to play a guitar or bass. Like I play wind instruments. I can play flutes, saxophones, and clarinets. And there's something about taking a wind and doing jazz, right? So
Yeah,
like so if you want to do jazz music, you know doing using a synth to do jazz is. I mean, you can do it. Like you could be like Sun Ra. I mean, Sun Ra is an American jazz band. They're one of the first ones to use like Moogs, but they weren't using DX7s. They were using Moogs. They were using like big modular Moogs and mini Moogs, and they actually, Herbie Hancock was using stuff like that. So you can use like a synth, like an electronic musician can use something like that as a jazz artist. Because like I said, Bernie Worrell, Sun Ra, if you get into Herbie Hancock, Stevie Wonder, they all used synthesizers in very artistic ways. So it's just a matter of how you can do it. But like playing a Yamaha piano or a Hammond B3 organ or just a regular piano, any kind of a Steinway or something. There's something about that just has an honesty when you're performing that you can't get out of the box. And I think that is something that whether you listen to an Elton John, or you listen to Billy Joel, you listen to Ben Folds, there's something about playing a piano that is like, wow, that can be very impactful.
piano is great for everything, and if you can play even just, like, basic stuff, like, it doesn't have to be, like, Elton John level stuff, you
No,
know,
it
it
does. But
just
just the
has
idea of
and,
it.
like, yeah, I love it. Piano's my favorite for sure. I like the
Because even
orchestral instruments a lot.
well, I think about the piano is like even if you're not like a Ben Folds or you're not Billy Joel, right? If you come at it with the ability that you have, I think a song sounds very honest if you're just on a piano singing it, like a guy with a good acoustic guitar or a woman with an acoustic guitar singing something unplugged.
Yeah,
Whether you went and did that in a box, but even if you know only three chords, but if you have a lot of heart,
you can
right?
still make so many songs with 3 chords, you
Yeah,
know?
I mean, you
Yeah,
don't have to know all the chords in the world, the Beatle chords and all the different aspects. If you come at it with an honesty, you think about like Kurt Cobain and grunge, was the fact that they came at it with after all these like hair bands and all these produced like commercial bands, he came at it out of Sub Pop. He never wanted to be a big star. He just did what he felt was heartful to him. What
it's
was in his soul, and that brought that whole Sub Pop movement and made the Pearl Jams and the Soundgardens and the Alice in Chains. All those bands were able to get out there because he believed in himself and didn't care about whether he made money. He just did it. You know.
yeah, they really didn't. They hated their most popular song and everything too.
Yeah, they
This
never wanted to make money. They just did it because they liked the sub pop scene. They loved that kind of scene, and they kind of got put on the train because management put you on the train. But he probably would have been better off if he stayed on sub pop the whole time. But
yeah,
that's just the way things are. But yeah, I just think it's interesting how music takes you, and I think you do have to be mindful as an artist that if you get on the kind of train, there are people that will kind of take you away from yourself, and you kind of got to stick to your guns and make sure that you stay comfortable and don't let other people's like image for you overtake you.
yeah, like, if your goal is to make something real and make a new style or do whatever is right for you, then nobody's gonna really mess with that, but if you want money, then yeah, sure, listen to those people because they know how to, like, make bank, you know what I mean? If that's all you care about, but you have to, like, have that intention, right? Like, obviously for Nirvana and stuff, he didn't want that. So that's why we get this sub pop stuff. And I like that, you know? I like that music more than pop music for sure. And it is basic, as you mentioned, like hair metal crazy solos or anything. Like a lot of it is pretty like straight up basic chords and melodies, right? So yeah, but like it's definitely a vibe. And it's the live instruments too that makes it like so good too, even though it's basic. Um
Yeah,
and
I mean it's kind of like one of my favorite bands of all time is the Who, just because I like the dynamics between like Keith Moon and Roger Daltrey and Pete Townsend. He was like Pete Townsend's this art school guy that had all these ideas about rock operas. And then Keith Moon is like one of the craziest drummers ever. He never kept time. He kind of went off and just went everywhere. And so the Who's kind of like the first punk band because they actually have a punk aesthetic like in 66 with My Generation. That album, it predates the Ramones and the Clash and everybody else. And if you listen to it, it sounds like punk.
I didn't
It,
know
it,
that.
it's
That's
very basic. It's very powerful. It's very it's just raw. It's very loud. It's raw. It's like not what the Beatles were doing. It's not what any of those other bands were doing. It's like it is like the first example of a punk type of aesthetic. And later they defined themselves and got more controlled. But that to me was always like a mark for me. It was like, wow, I like that energy
yeah,
that you see, happen with grunge. You see it happen with alternative. You see it happen now with like these new kind of post-punk bands that are showing up that I've been interviewing. I think there's always going to be a room for that kind of Ramones kind of power that people just want to be honest and just, play something that they just feel makes them feel good as young people. They want to get out there and they don't have to be perfect.
yeah, and like these bands that you mentioned are all like massively famous and popular too. And they all started maybe like a little weird and like unusual and everything, but eventually, and it didn't, it's just like anybody else, like they got into the spotlight and like they kept a lot of them kept doing that too. Like they didn't change once they got in the spotlight. And you asked me about the future of music, and I think that's it. It's the same thing that's always been happening, but people forget that, like, you don't have to follow trends at all, you can make them yourself, you know?
Yeah, I think that's the trend. In my opinion, when I've talked to people, the trend is that be yourself, know yourself, be confident that that the best you is as good as anybody else. It might be better.
Or else
And
it's people, the people
yeah,
doing this are people, like, if they can do it, then you can do it, and you don't have to change. Yeah,
well, I think the thing about being a musician is at some point you have to have a certain level of confidence, a certain level of assertiveness. And people were like, "Well, why do you think you deserve to be on the stage?" It's like, well, if you're an artist, you have to take a stand. You got to put that art out, and you're going to get criticized one way or the other. People are either going to love it, they're going to hate it, or they're going to say, well, but the thing is, like, you're creating. And so once you create something, there's always going to be somebody that doesn't like it or says something about it. And as an artist, you have to be strong enough to say, yeah, I'm going to fail. And then I'm going to learn from my failure. But you got to be willing to put those failures out to progress.
yeah. But I do feel like a lot of these labels and stuff, they don't select music based on what's good or not. They select music based on what they think will sell, based on current trends or whatever. So like you don't have to worry about what they think necessarily. If you like it, then you like it. It's good. If you like it, then somebody else will like it. It's good. You know what I mean? Just because
Yeah.
labels don't like it right away, I think if you keep plugging away though, eventually they'll start to get understand your vibe a little better, understand your potential. Like you just have to keep making music though. Like you can't just submit one thing and then give up because of a rejection. Like it doesn't work that way.
And we're kind of living in a world where like even big bands went off the labels. Like Pearl Jam went off their label, Radiohead went off their label. So a lot of times, like the goal to be on the label might not even be the right point because a lot of times, like if you go on TikTok, you can maybe you get signed in order to get big, but there's a lot of stuff that people are doing where once they get out there, they end up deciding to stay indie just so they can control it better, and just look for distribution deals and not actually be on labels, but look to get distribution without label, um, um, status.
Yeah. The only reason why I would ever recommend a label to somebody is because promoting for yourself takes a lot of time and money. Like it's either going to cost you a lot of money or a lot of time. So it's like you have to choose. But if you work with a label, they do a lot of that for you. But other than that, anybody can do it themselves. Like these labels are just people too. You can make your own. I recently did that. So it's like anybody can do this stuff. Like you don't need a record label. You don't need I mean, it's nice to have blogs and references and stuff like that, but if you get the numbers on your own, people notice that. They're like, "Okay, what's going on here? I wanna work with this person," you know? So, like, yeah, um,
Yeah, I think
but
that's where
anybody can do the promotion stuff.
yeah, I think it's kind of like a do-it-yourself world, and then you can make choices where if you need label support or you need tour support because you want to get out there. So a lot of bands would like they want to get on the road. They want the label to help them get on the road. So they want to get a booking agent. They want to get into the venues, and certain indie labels can get you into venues. And so that's if that's what the purpose is. Yeah, I can get that as a live act myself that wanting to play certain places, yeah, I'm gonna want the pull to be able to get into that club so I can play. Uh, but if I can get that with a booking agent, then I'll do it that way. But yeah, I think we're at the end of our show because we hit like an hour. But I do appreciate
Oh,
you coming on, and I think everybody hopefully heard the second attempt of playing your song, which I think they did.
I just wanted to say real quick that, I have, an email list on my website. If you go to the bottom on my website, erinnicolemusic.com, there's the Happy Mountain email subscription that if you sign up for that, we get um, discounts on merch and um, I forgot what I was gonna say. Oh, we have like pre-release stuff so that you can get like quick. I'm mixing up my words now.
But that's fine. But you
Pre-release
want people to
songs
check out
that
your
are
site.
unreleased and stuff like that. You guys can get access to that early. So yeah.
And if people notice her website's been streaming the whole time, so on the replay, it's been moving, but you can see it and you can just type it in. You can't click on it, but on the podcast that gets published, there will be a hyperlink for that's clickable. So if you just heard what she said. If you click her website, you can get on the mailing list, and there's all kinds of goodies there. And you want to check it out. That's we always encourage
There's the mug.
anybody. Oh, like that, like the mug.
Yeah,
You got merch. You
I
got
have
shirt. You got
I have
t-shirts too. You got t-shirts, right?
a Lola t-shirt and I have two different mugs here. I have turtle mug and Lola mug. We're gonna have more merch soon, and like I said, early releases to our songs.
Well, that's all good. We always encourage like, everybody who listens to our podcast to go to the websites, go to the hyperlinks. Make sure you go to the Facebook if they have a Facebook. Subscribe to the YouTube. Download on Spotify. Download on Apple, wherever your music is. Make sure you playlist it. Make sure you like it. You forward it. You tell everybody you like it. And that's just important to show artists that when you're listening, hit the love button, say you like it, that don't listen to it 100 times and never hit the like. So it's like, just please, it's just important for artists for us to get that recognition so people can know that we're getting the numbers so we can prove what we need to do and go forward. So thank you very much, Eryn Nicole, for being on the show, and we wish you the best of luck at everything you're doing.
Thank you so much, and have a great night. Thanks
Thank
everyone
you.
for listening.